Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Metaphysical podcast. In part one of this discussion on Mars, we talked about claims of people being sent to the red planet, researchers who have found very strange and forbidden things, and suppressed remote viewing findings. In part two, we're going to talk about Mars moon Phobos, which is basically the United States doesn't seem like it wants to touch with a 10-foot pole, which is kind of like Buzz Aldrin. They don't seem to want to touch him with a 10-foot pole either. So is Phobos artificial or natural? Why is that discussion so controversial in the first place? And what did John Vivanco's team find when they remotely viewed Mars and Phobos? Well, join me, investigative researcher Rob Counts, and John for a show that's out of this world.
Yeah. And if you are listening to the Metaphysical podcast or you're watching to us on a video platform, please leave us a 5-star rating and review. This is going to really help us reach more people. And make sure that you like and subscribe wherever you're watching us.
All right, John, how are you?
Doing good?
Good. Looking forward to this one. We got crazy in the first episode.
Phobos is weird. Wait, which one is Phobos? Is it fear or what is it? Doom? What is it? Fear and doom or fear and
panic?
Panic?
Phobos is panic. Is that right? I think
Phobos
it's fear.
Panic?
Phobos is fear. That's why phobia comes before stuff when you have a fear of something, right?
You know, it's weird. It's like their place names. Like I always look at maps for place names on like, okay, like Devil's Canyon. That looks like a good, interesting place to go investigate. Or
like, what is that
creek? You know,
that river in Colorado that's called the Animas River.
Right.
Like, why would I want to go on that river?
I know. But I mean, see, the place names of things mean something.
I think they do too.
Yeah, they do.
Like usually you'll find when it's called like Devil's Creek or you're like, it's called Devil's Hill or something. There's some history, some like long ago history that created that name. It was there for a reason, and then we've just forgotten over time, or we take it for granted. And you should look back at that history and find out what happened.
Yeah, exactly.
It's relevant.
Yeah. I mean, anywhere you see on a map it says Skookum, you know, yeah, it's the name for Bigfoot.
Really?
Skookum Creek, Skookum Hill, Skookum Pond.
Is that a Native American term for?
Yeah, I mean, what is that? The terms that older tribes have used. Skookum. Yeah, or Booger Hill, Booger Valley.
Because they call the Bigfoot something like boogers. I can't remember what it is, but
right.
They're like skunk apes down south. They're called something boogers in Appalachia somewhere.
Right. And then you've got places named after them. So those are the places to look for weird things.
That's awesome. Good to know. Hope we get out there to actually, experience some of that ourselves. That'll be fun. So, okay, Phobos. I was surprised when you said particularly that you had a lot of data on Phobos because it's like such a small, tiny, moon.
Right.
I mean, what is this thing like 14 feet or something like that? It's 17. Sorry, 14 feet. 14. It's 17 by 14.
It's miniature.
11 miles.
Exactly. It's not
just like 14 feet in space.
Right. I mean, if you think about like what is it? The Kardashev scale. What is that? Is that what it's called? So the Kardashev scale, when you get to theorizing civilizations, like this is a scale that astrophysicists use, and they classify potential civilizations from type 1 civilization all the way up to type 5. They've expanded it beyond type 3. And when you get to type 2 civilization, we aren't even like on the scale yet as far as the human race goes, at least on the public side. But we're probably type 1 on the Black Project side. Type 2 civilizations, they speculate, can use asteroids as ships, right? Can control them, move them around, position them where they want, use them as ships, basically. There you go. I mean, that's cool sci-fi stuff. I love it.
Well, and why not?
Yeah. I mean, that's Phobos right there, man. That is Phobos.
It's the best camouflage you could possibly have. So what you're saying is that you think that Phobos is a Type 2 civilization craft that has been potentially hollowed out and being used as a spacecraft, like that this is a possibility out there.
Yeah, I mean, it's got a lot of interesting aspects to it that scientists have pointed out. And really just like regular scientists have wondered if it's hollow. There are these strange streaks that go across the surface,
Yeah, that
and
we just saw it in that last image, like
right,
that.
some of them crisscross some of these streaks, and it almost appears as though there's a superstructure underneath the surface. Now, as far as like the way, like conventionally, theoretically, the way they say those streaks, this is a theory. Theory is not fact. Yet a lot of times they get propagated as fact. That whatever hit the front of it right there with that big, huge indentation caused the debris, the gravity of Phobos basically caused the debris to slide across the surface. So that's the claim. It rolled across, boom, 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 boom. Who knows? Maybe so, maybe not. Theory, it's a theory. But a lot of people have pointed out that it does look like there might be a superstructure underneath that.
Well, that does look like the clearing there is some type of unpolished metal or metallic. I don't know. It could appear like that from far away.
Right.
Or just entirely like rock. I don't know.
Right.
But that is strange, though, because we're looking at all of this like reddish dust around it, and that area is just so cleaned off,
Right. Yeah. I mean, okay, so remote viewing data on this, we actually started out at the monolith. The monolith.
So there is a monolith on Phobos?
There is a monolith on Phobos. It's near the very large crater. It's basically a protruding, almost looks like a artificial object. And, Buzz Aldrin has referenced it before. Yeah, there's Buzz.
Yeah, what does he say here?
It's not gone before. Fly by the comets, visit asteroids, visit the moon of Mars. There's a monolith there, a very unusual structure on this little potato-shaped object that goes around Mars once in 7 hours. When people find out about that, they're going to say, who put that there? Who put that there? Well, the universe. If you choose, God put it there. Maybe.
Yeah, weird.
Generally, that's not how monolith gets placed,
Right.
Somewhere.
Right, exactly. So we were looking at the monolith. That's really like what we were looking at initially. And what we saw with the data is that it appeared to be, well, for one thing, there was a lot of like residual, like electronic buzzing. It felt residual. Like, in other words, it wasn't necessarily there at the time, but there was a residual kind of buzzing coming off of it in the data. Meaning, when you are experiencing remote viewing, you're like sensing not only in one moment, but through the past as well. So when I say residual, it's no longer in a state where it's buzzing electronically, like sending out signals, because it was sending out like frequency, very intense frequency. It was also, the data was describing that it was the entry point into the
asteroid or whatever it is,
whatever the moon. It is. The moon, yeah, into fear, basically. And so I was actually one of the viewers on this blind, and I remember like it was insane, because this is a weird thing that happens. I've noticed that bilocation in remote viewing happens more often when you step outside of like the Earth terrestrial realm. So bilocation is a state that happens to a remote viewer where they're literally two places at once, right? So sitting here, working on a session, I go into an altered state as I'm writing stuff down, close my eyes. All of a sudden, I pop into a scene, and I'm like fully there. It's like you see everything. So what I saw when I bilocated was this like imagery, like I was like on one side of it and I could see to the far end of it. And it was just this hollowed out core with structures and buildings and debris and boxes inside. And behind me was like this control center where the monolith, like if you went into the monolith, you would drop down like in an elevator, so to speak. And there was a control center behind me. But what I saw in front of me was this literally like this world that was inside of it, inside of this rocky structure that beings used to exist inside of. There was nothing in there when I looked at it and when the other viewers looked at it. It was like it was not in use. And so there were supplies in there. It was dark in there. There was stuff that was stored there for future use. And it's really interesting too, because when you get to the moon, our moon, in some of these structures that we look at, they're abandoned. They've been abandoned for a while. They were built like God knows how long ago, but they're abandoned. And so a lot of beings and even, humans, when they can get to them, will use them as supply depots to put supplies in because they're sealed off locations. And so they can get back to them. And Phobos right now appears to be used as a supply, like a supply depot. But in the past, in the far distant past, this was part of the warring that was going on around Mars. And it was sort of a control structure. Like it had this very, very dark aspect to it that in part it was like it was beaming frequency to try to subdue and control others, presumably down on Mars. And that's like a lot of what the data said. It was like literally about subduing minds and working on the side of these wars that were going on, like working different sides and controlling minds and trying to like manipulate. It really reminded me a lot of what's happening here on Earth, in a sense, where you have this sort of idea that there are those that are trying to control the minds of the humans. It was very, very similar to that idea. So I don't know. Phobos is a weird thing. I wouldn't want to go there. There's been numerous craft, like what you were saying in the intro. I mean, the Russians, they've been trying to get to Phobos.
Yeah, was this woman you said earlier named Marina Popovich, right?
Right.
So this is a Soviet astronaut, said that Phobos craft was shot
right. This was Phobos
down.
2.
Now,
well, first, I mean, go back to Phobos 1. Phobos 1 disappeared first.
And no, just so you guys know, we are talking about Phobos the moon, but here when he says that, he's talking about the two craft from Russia. They were named after Phobos.
Right. We're sending probes. Russia's sending probes to check out these locations, right? So what did the Russians do? I think they sent Phobos 1 first, which disappeared. Then Phobos 2 disappeared.
Okay, yeah. What happened to Phobos 2? Russian cosmonaut and U.S. Army remote viewers say something alien did. Now, this was an article published August 21st, 2018.
Right. Well, it was said that in the 90s, I think it was in the 90s, after Phobos 1 disappeared, like 1988, it got lost. They just lost radio contact with it. 5 days later, they sent up Phobos 2 on the heels of that. And it got into Mars orbit in 1989. And as it was going towards Phobos, I mean, its original intention was to land there, take soil samples, photographs, send them back, etc. And lost contact with it as it was going to Phobos. And so these photographs, right before it lost contact, were received. And the photographs show some very strange things. They show almost what looks like a projectile. And they also show what looks like a very large saucer-shaped craft.
Well, and that's what we were just looking at right there, was that black saucer, right, in that image. Like, is this a shadow? I mean, if it was, what was causing that shadow? Because there's nothing there on the surface that could have caused that, unless it's a hole.
Right. Well, I think it was Marina Popov, the Russian astronaut, said that it's not a shadow. Other scientists chimed in too. This is not a shadow. There's no shadow that can appear like that. So, so they had, apparently, this was like after the declassification of the remote viewing program, They had the ex-Army remote viewers out of the DIA do a project on it to find out what happened. And they said that a craft came up from Mars, UFO, alien craft came up from Mars and basically shot an energy weapon at Phobos 2 in order to incapacitate it and destroy it before it got to Phobos. So now when we remote viewed, what happened to Phobos 2, we got the same data. Which was literally, there were aliens that came up from some base on Mars to take out Phobos 2 because they did not want it to land. Here's the thing with Phobos. Phobos can be turned operational. So, and I think this is like a really weird, interesting thing. Why do the Russians, why are they so interested in going to Phobos?
This is my question, John.
When NASA is not. Yes, you asked that question. Why?
So, but here's the thing. We all know that especially during the Cold War, that the Russians were doing everything and anything possible to get one up on anyone else, which means that their remote viewing experiments or projects were probably way more intense than the ones we had going over here in the United States that we're aware of. Of course, the United States, they'll go full retard with this stuff too, right? Excuse me for saying that, but that's just what it is. But Russia, if like what was on Phobos, because look, people at home, you have to understand, if you have a country that has limited resources and you're going into space and you're choosing a mission for a very specific reason because you're looking for something. Why Phobos?
Right.
Was this, a measuring contest to see who is bigger and badder? I don't think so. Like something had to have been there.
No, there's two different things going on here. You have like end goals and intentions of one side versus end goals and intentions of the other side. So as far as what we've seen in the data, Phobos, the asteroid moon thing, is to a degree operational. You're talking about a ship, man. You're talking about, this is a ship. This is a type 2 civilization ship. The Russians knew that. The Russians wanted to go there.
They want the technology.
Yes, exactly. While NASA is not focused on it. NASA is focused, well, heck, maybe it's because of the whole jump room stuff. What do we need that for? We got the jump room. You know what I mean?
Great point.
So that's the deal with that. So NASA had literally said, no, we're not going to Phobos. Like, they're not going to do it. They're focused on Mars. But I mean, even NASA lost the Mars Observer. Like they lost the Mars Observer when it was nearing Mars. It was 3 days from orbit and they lost contact. Why? I mean, look, there's a lot of things that can go wrong. Absolutely. But the thing is, the ex-military remote viewers said the same thing about Mars Observer, that it was taken out. Right. I haven't viewed that one, but I think you could probably do a really interesting project with remote viewing where you're looking at all these failures and to see what caused each one.
What really happened.
And what really happened, because there's some skullduggery going on around Mars and Phobos. Those guys, they're doing something bad.
Well, I think this gets even more interesting when we take into consideration some of the other peripheral data that we've been talking about, which is Percival Lowell saying that there was a canal system there, and then something we haven't brought up yet, which is that certain people allegedly have been approached about going to Mars.
Right.
Laura Eisenhower, for instance. Now, this is the great granddaughter. Is it the great or double great? It's a great granddaughter of President Dwight D. Eisenhower. She is. I'm not sure if you guys have seen any of her work before at home, but she's like she's an astrologer, very actually talented astrologer. Like she just knows, that's her thing. Like she knows about all of that stuff, right? Well, anyway, I guess because of her family, her background, she describes being approached to go there and asked to go on a mission, and she refuses. But I think this is a little clip. Lindsay, you're going to play that?
To go off planet. In 2006, I was recruited to go off planet to Mars, the planet Mars. A lot of people don't believe me. I get, mail all the time. You're disinfo, you're crazy, blah, blah, blah. And, it doesn't faze me at all. It actually makes me stronger in a lot of ways because, truth doesn't need belief. It just is. It doesn't require, it doesn't feed on anybody. It doesn't steal.
That's right. Dutch Foundation.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I do find it curious. Like, we brought this up earlier, like where, no, not in the show, but, off to the side, like how come you got the Obama thing, right? With
Bizarre.
the president, you've got Laura Eisenhower with the president. You've got
Andrew Basaggio,
who's going to be president. Like
Basaggio, I said it wrong
what is this going on? What's going on here? So
yeah, what is going on here? And what does Mars have to do with presidents?
I know, right?
It's weird.
Does it have something to do with the god of war? I mean, what is it?
Really, that's what I'm thinking. Like that just popped into my head too. Man, she looks just like her.
She does.
She is an Eisenhower. Like if
Right.
there was an Eisenhower look, she's got it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, like what is that? Like why? And I mean, there's other weird things that, why was the last thing that Obama did before he was done in his presidency was to go down to Antarctica? There is nothing in Antarctica.
Okay, so
well, according to them, like why would they do that?
This is another show, man, because if we go down that rabbit, because I got a lot of data on that.
Yeah. Well, let's do that in another show.
Yeah, we do.
Antarctica kind of needs to be
like we're gonna go from Mars, Phobos down to Antarctica.
Well, it would really the connection there.
Random like trains of thoughts here.
The connection there was the president.
Confused.
Yeah, the presidents and Obama.
Right.
That's how we got there. Just in case anyone needs to remember that.
Oh man. Okay, we're gonna do a show on Antarctica. Mark it down.
But talking to Laura, right? Her take on it was that there's a colony on Mars and that there's experiments going on Mars. Now, does this explain why someone from the surface of Mars would go to protect Phobos and that spacecraft? I don't know.
Right. Well, you have to think like, okay, is there a breakaway civilization on Mars and it's literally humans that are doing that?
Right.
Right.
Martians, but human. And human
No,
form.
I haven't seen that. We didn't see that with that data. We didn't see that with that. Or like, is NASA trying to protect Phobos or not NASA? I mean, come on. Or some black project of the United States supposedly tried to. No, I don't think so. Because we haven't seen like humans involved with that. It's been, and so here's the other thing. Here's the other side of it. We've looked at some of these anomalies on the surface of Mars. So one particular anomaly, I can't even remember what it was at this point. So sorry about that. There are plenty of them to look at, but one particular anomaly, when we started to remote view it, we saw these reptoid-like beings, like multiple viewers are looking at reptilian type aliens. And immediately a couple of viewers, and myself included, started to hear alarm sounds. And we were literally kicked out, like pushed out psychically.
So they have some technology that's detecting that?
And this is a common thing in remote viewing. Like there are areas that you remote view that are purported alien bases or what on Earth, it doesn't matter. And we call them viewer traps or.
Wow, look at that. Look at that image.
Right.
That looks reptilian of some lizard of some sort.
Well, like I said in the previous episode, we've seen things like that, like on the surface of Mars, like life, lizardy type life on Mars. So we've remote viewed these locations and been kind of chased out of them. Like they have a technology that can sense this stuff. And, we find this kind of thing. It does happen. It happens to remote viewers. There are other remote viewers outside of me who have spoken about this. But yeah, so there are these bases on Mars where there are other types of beings living there, have bases set up. And it seems to be the protection of Phobos is from one of those groups as opposed to, humans on the moon, because that thing's operational. Or it can be made operational, full of tech.
It must be that. Why else would the Russians go there?
Right.
Why pick such a random place to go? It's so random.
Well, they've tried like how many times? 3 or 4 times, at least publicly. Phobos 1, Phobos 2, Phobos Grunt, that was another one. Like that one got lost pretty much after it left the atmosphere. And the Russians, I think Medvedev was president at that time, and I think that he was accusing the US of taking it out. Or somebody took it out.
That sounds like a very Russian thing to do.
Yeah, right. So yeah, I mean, there's something going on. There's something really interesting going on around Mars. I mean, who wouldn't want to have fear as your like little astronaut ship?
Good point. Yeah, that's strange. And I mean, it's like it's such a small little satellite too. I mean, it's 17 miles by 14 miles by 11 miles or whatever it was. It's oddly shaped, and there's not much. I mean, it makes more sense that it would be just like I mean, think about it. How many moons have we seen that are like they're just it's an asteroid that just got caught up, right?
Say.
Right, what they say. Or in this case, you know, maybe it is just that. Maybe it is this type 2 civilization.
Well, I mean, a lot of people do think that our moon is from a type 2 civilization, where it's basically just a giant spaceship. You know, a lot of the weird data around the moon doesn't make sense. This is the thing. The moon does not make sense to a lot of scientists, physicists,
to any of them.
The moon doesn't make sense to them in any theory explanation that is conventional. And some of them have publicly stated this. I think Dr. Robert Brett.
Tons of quotes on this.
Exactly. But the only thing that explains it is that it is a giant spaceship. That's the only thing that can explain everything about the moon. But, you know, it can't be because there's nothing else out there. But you know what? We are actually beyond that. Forgive me. We are beyond that. I'm living in I'm living in 1995. I don't know. We are beyond the point now, I think, at least publicly, that at least advanced aircraft are moving through our skies because of all the Pentagon releases. And then, you know, they get into the huge, like, argument about it with each other, saying there are no proof of aliens. Oh yeah, it's alien, you know. So, but I think, you know, this is just preparation for the Project Bluebeam.
Yeah. Do you think that in our lifetimes that we'll see evidence of alien existence? Like actually legit, like it would be an open thing?
There's a lot of evidence of alien existence on this planet. It just depends on who you trust. Authority figures who want to keep towing a certain line, they will tell you no. And they will probably always tell you no, because this stuff is of the highest classification. And then the rest, the people on the planet are trained to laugh at it. Trained to laugh at it. So that's still how it is, but it's shifting towards, wait, there's something really happening. But you have to understand, like, it's all nonsense.
Right.
The Pentagon releasing this stuff, saying, "Wait, look at this weird stuff happen." It's all nonsense. This has been investigated and known and figured out and worked with for a very, very long time. And I'm not just saying that. There are tons of researchers out there who have put the pieces together that would literally, like, provide tons of circumstantial evidence that would likely turn a court case towards them winning because of all the data and information available. It would. So, I mean, you even have, what's his name, who ran Project Hynek, Dr. Alan Hynek. I mean, Air Force brought out Project Blue Book in order to discredit the UFO phenomena. And Hynek turned into a more or less, what the heck is going on here guy. Like I wouldn't say a believer, but a guy who was like, there's something going on here.
That's right? Not explainable.
That's not explainable. And you have tons of researchers who have found really incredible things, but it gets buried, hidden, and denied completely. And my tact has always been, look, if you're interested in trying to understand what this is, go investigate it for yourself. It's like remote viewing. It's like people say, prove to me remote viewing works and then I'll believe you. No, I'm not going to prove it. Look, I went on TV early on, like mainstream TV shows to try to prove remote viewing works. It doesn't work. If I sit here and I do stuff on paper and I'm blind and I get things like lined up with what I was tasked on, people still don't believe it. They still don't believe it. The only way you can get anybody to believe it is if they do it themselves, like remote viewing. Like, I don't like play with people who say, prove it to me. It's like, go learn it. You can learn it anywhere now. You know, I teach it all the time. I teach it. You can learn it off YouTube. That's how you learn it.
Yeah.
You want to know if UFOs are real? Go investigate it.
Hmm.
Go investigate it yourself. Have an open mind.
Well, and I mean, just to explain that, why would we be so willing to believe authority figures on almost anything right now? Really think about it. It's like, think about how many agendas are out there to either protect, just work that these corporations are doing, intellectual property, or just simply protecting having to rewrite all of the history books because we got it wrong.
Right.
I mean, on a weekly basis, I come across anomalies that would rewrite history.
Right.
No one's addressing it. It's ridiculous. Like, if you honestly screw Phobos, go to Africa and actually see what's in Africa. What's in Africa will blow your mind. There are species of animals in Africa that exist nowhere else on the planet. No one's talking about. And if you talk to the tribes people, they'll tell you what they've seen or what they've experienced over the last 100 years that would completely rewrite what people think about the extinction, periods and all of that stuff. I mean,
don't even get me started on the whole extinction ball game. That's just ridiculousness. That's ridiculousness.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, never mind. I mean, just so many things that we can't explain, and we're so unwilling to fit anything new into that. Like, where has the wonder that people used to have gone? I mean, the reason why Percival Lowell was so interested in Mars is because he was finding new stuff that ended up just getting swept under the rug because of one account, where there were, several others. We don't know what's actually going on. I need a telescope to look myself,
Right. Well, that's the thing too. Like with him, there were a lot of people on his camp because it's through observation, right? Then you have one person come in and publicly naysay it. So this is like literally the psychological tactic. If you go on to any message forum and you find some interesting piece of information there, somebody's presented it, people are starting to talk about it, and you're reading through it, there is going to be a naysayer that is injected into it to say why it can't be, and then the energy stops. You lose interest. This is a psychological tactic, complete, total psychological tactic. Whether that thing is true or not, just to get people's minds off it, kill the energy of it, slow it down so it doesn't go anywhere beyond that. This is a normal frigging tactic that's always used. See it all the time.
Yeah, and it's frustrating because we, like, human beings thinking they know everything has got to be the biggest joke around.
Right.
Really think about it. Like, and part of it is this hubris around creating technology, which they don't even know where it came from. They honestly don't even know. Like, we were functioning for literally hundreds of thousands of years, and if you really look at history and really what's out there, potentially millions of years,
right,
where this technology, potentially we didn't have this technology, and all of a sudden it's this like random technology that comes into play. Now, if you know enough, that there was something that happened there was technology before the flood. There was Atlantean technology or something like that. Very interesting stuff. But point is like, humans have been around for a really long time. Like, thinking that we know everything is hysterical.
Right.
Like, give me a break. You don't even know what's in your oceans, and you are somehow like smart enough to know what physicists have and haven't discovered, or scientists, these so-called, like, every single one of these so-called like professionals or these so-called experts have their own personal baggage that gets inserted into everything that they say every time they open their mouths.
Right.
You know? It's like
Right.
having to go to a couple of different doctors to really figure out what's going on. Why are you listening to one scientist tell you your business when they don't know? And
Right.
they've only experienced one thing and are looking at it from one angle, and then they give you their assessment and you're like, okay, thank you.
Right. Well, I mean, this is something that we've discussed before in the past. It's like science has become the new dogma, and the scientists have become the high priests, the gatekeepers of another realm of information. And they are the ones that you go to get that information. They are the ones that you go to tell you what's right and what's wrong. And they're set up in that way as the authorities that are guarding that gate. And you need to go through the indoctrination system of the colleges to get that piece of paper that says that you can become one of those gatekeepers because you've been brainwashed. Really, it's really what it is. Of course, scientific method is one thing, but
yeah, but the scientists are not even using the scientific
right,
method, because if they did, they would be looking at what Graham Hancock has been saying, and they would actually give it a shot instead of attacking his
Right.
character.
Right.
And all they're doing is bringing stuff up, which actually makes rational sense, gets completely cut off at the knees because they start attacking his character.
Right.
Which is literally the number one thing that you don't do if you're a credible journalist or credible person. You never attack character. You go after the source so that you can get to the bottom of whether it's truthful or not. Why is it that science has been functioning for so long in a way that is attacking characters rather than talking about the substance?
Really good question, right? Because they're trained to do that in their peer review. In the peer review, they're trained to attack, like just be total a-holes, and to attack.
We will never learn the truth when people are attacking one another instead of looking at actual objective truth. That's not scientific method at all. They're literally undermining science by doing all of that.
Right, exactly. I know.
Yeah, and this is not all scientists. Some of the scientists out there are actually, probably pretty good. They're probably trying to follow this, but I guarantee you, if they're really honest and they start bringing up stuff that goes against the narrative and they have proof, it's a very long process or an arduous process to even get something published, or they come out with something and it's they get royally attacked by everyone,
Right.
That shouldn't be. How are we going to find out the truth if that happens every time someone finds something new?
Right.
And also people forget. It's like Einstein's theory of relativity is a theory.
Right.
He stated up front, he's like, this is the best that I can make it. It's a theory.
Right.
It's meant to be rewritten. And then it's like, if you start even touching that,
right.
And honestly, scientists don't even know how all of this works. Like the 3 different methods they use to construct their hypotheses revolved around the theory of relativity, string theory, electromagnetics. That sometimes they're completely at odds with one another while they're building this stuff, and they're like, I don't know how it works, but this is blah blah blah. I mean, it's weird.
Yep, I know, it's very strange. I don't know. I mean, this is how people are trained in order to combat those things that will blow our minds, to take us outside of our specific worldviews that are being created for us. So, and that's, it's like you get to Mars, you get to Phobos, you get to things that have happened in our solar system, these locations where there were older civilizations that are apparent when you look at satellite photography of these locations, like on Mars. Yet, I mean, you get shut down as just being totally nuts, because it's like, that is like, how many steps is that beyond just getting to know that there are anomalous craft in the sky, right? Ancient civilizations on another planet, people just aren't there yet as far as being opened up to it yet. But I think that there is potentially that beginning to happen now with some of the leaks on these Pentagon UFOs. So that to me is kind of a good sign. But you should never be looking to the government to reveal to you, that
Well,
these things
yeah.
are real. And I think that's a big problem that we have. Like you were saying, we just keep going back to the authority figures.
But it's strange because, I mean, you and I both know this, John, because we're old enough to know this, but it's like in the 80s and the 90s, the last thing you were going to do is trust the government. And it
Right.
was okay. You were still voting. You were still into the entire thing, but you were just kind of like, yeah, okay, but, I'll trust myself on this one or whatever.
Right.
But now all of a sudden things have shifted in a way where it's like either it's very strange. Something happened over the last 10 to 15 years where it all shifted over into like really trusting authority figures over everyone else. I think because there's so much fear there's so much fear that people are going to believe something that's untrue, perhaps, or that this kind of comfortable narrative that's been placed in front of us is being threatened somehow.
Yeah, it's a curious thing. It's like, yeah, I know exactly what you're saying. There's the beginnings of a huge shutdown on thinking and only trusting authorities. But sometimes I wonder if that only exists in the bubble of bots online as well as the mainstream media. Like they live in their own weird little bubble of this. And it's not how the world thinks anymore. I almost feel like part of this is like bots in social media propagating like these ideas when you present ideas that are different. And then the mainstream media only saying, like, living in the bubble that everybody feels this way, everybody thinks this way. Because since the Smith-Mundt Act was repealed, the mainstream media is now really controlled and funded by government when it wasn't before. And that was something Obama had repealed just before he left. And it was in the dead of night, quiet, that he repealed it, which literally repealed the law of propaganda on US citizens through mainstream media. So now all mainstream media is compromised because of this. So I don't really know if the mainstream media exists within its own bubble, and that's not how people feel. They're just trying to influence and get people to think that's how everyone else feels. I'm not sure. I am not sure about that.
Yeah.
Because I don't know how people can change that fast. But I do know that they love to engineer the younger generations to get them to not believe in something, and we do see that is happening.
Yeah. Well, just to turn direction here again, Lindsay, you pulled up a really interesting image over there, and I think we were talking about this monolith before, but I don't think it was really clear to people how strange this thing looks, this monolith on Phobos.
Right.
I mean, when you're talking about the entire structure of like, how does this just randomly appear when there's nothing else on that, unless it is actually some type of created structure that was put there? And this is the monolith that you looked into, John, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the one we looked at. Yeah, it was the connection point to the interior, as well as it was acting as some sort of antenna on top of it.
I mean, that's what it looks like.
Yeah.
And it looks flat and almost smooth on that side too.
Yeah, it was as far as I remember, it was like a metallic, very dense, thick metallic, but it was also felt natural at the same time. Some natural artificial thing, just like that, asteroid moon, same kind of deal. It's like it's a natural structure that has been somehow turned artificial.
Oh, and that's where it is? Is that what that's telling us? Interesting. The Martian surface feature in question is no more than a roughly rectangular boulder. Really, though? When does that happen? Again, there's nothing else around there that looks even remotely similar, and this thing's just sticking up, and they think that is just a rectangular boulder.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, you're a NASA scientist. Your employer, the one who pays pays for your life, is NASA. You're not going to say it's an artificial structure. So it's a boulder, man. Get over it. It's just a boulder.
But what's also interesting is we're talking about a photo that was taken from however far away. It's not like you're interacting with that
Right.
thing. And you've got an expert saying that it's this. This is what it is.
Right.
But they don't know that that's what it is.
No, they don't. They don't.
That's what drives me crazy about this
Right.
whole thing is it's like, you know, if an expert plumber comes over my house and tells me to put a toilet in the middle of the kitchen, I'm going to tell him he's crazy and leave, whether
Right.
he's calling himself an expert or not.
Right.
You know, it's just a bizarre world we live in right now. It's like, I think it's like people's character has been taken out of the equation when it's an
Right.
extremely important factor in the entire thing, you know? So weird. So, okay, we've got, is there anything else that we missed about Mars that we want to talk about? Because we're getting close to the end of this. One thing to note is that there is a planned journey to Phobos. Now, like soon, I guess. There is supposed to be a launch in...
I think the Japanese, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
dude. So Martian Moon Exploration, MMX, is a robotic space probe that will be sent to Phobos to get examples. It'll be led by the Japanese Aerospace Exploration Agency, JAXA, with instruments contributed by American NASA, European Space Agency, and France. So,
Okay, so European Space Agency and France, which I think Russia is a part of that.
So I think, you know, it'll be very interesting to see what they do. And I think another thing that maybe some of you at home will find very interesting is if you really look at the amount of money that's been funneled into NASA, which is a tremendous amount of money, and you take into consideration a couple of points, which is one, that the technology that NASA is using hasn't really changed since the 1960s. It's the same technology.
Yeah.
And we're talking about trillions of dollars, where these things look like they should cost maybe billions, but
Right.
trillions and trillions of dollars have been funneled into NASA, and some of that money is even missing.
Right.
So if we've got missing trillions of dollars and we're talking about launches happening all the time, is there potentially more black operations going on with these launches than we're aware of?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You'd bet your ass, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Oh, and it's funny too. It's like using the same. This is the weird thing. Look at how computers have from the 1970s. Like you know, your phone is more powerful than the computers from the 1970s. The way that technology has, oh man, just like turned into something completely different from that start point. Now look at our transportation technology.
Gone nowhere.
Huh?
Planes, nowhere.
Rockets? Oh, come
Nowhere.
on. Like fuel, gas-powered cars? Oh, wait, now we have batteries. Oh, God.
Yeah.
Give me a break. Give me a break. And the main
It's
company
so
that
weird.
is literally like pushing the battery cars is called Tesla, which is an affront to Tesla. So come on, man. Doesn't make any sense.
Doesn't make any sense.
No. Technology
really,
has never
those
changed on
planes,
transportation.
And like they were doing a little bit at some point. It was like, oh, there was the Concorde. It was a little bit faster, right?
Right.
And then they even retired the Concorde, and just nothing happened.
Right.
No development.
Right. It's shut down. It's shut down completely.
And you walk into one of those, or like walk by one of those like cockpits that they have for the planes, and the same cockpit from like the 1970s.
Right. Right.
It's like nothing has changed. Like it's
Nothing's
a complete analog mess.
Right.
You know.
Right. And still using fuel, just gas, basically.
Jet fuel.
Jet form of gas, yeah, jet fuel. So combination of different things, but basically sending firecrackers into the air with rockets and whatnot. So technology's not changed at all on that front. It's actually
and yet it's changed so much in the palm of our hand, which just is really interesting because really, if you think about it, surveillance wise,
Well,
this
that's why we
such
got
good
these now.
sense. Right.
This is why we have them.
Yes. Because like if you're going to introduce technology, it would have to double as doing something.
Exactly.
So now it's like
that's, I mean, it's so crazy, man.
It's crazy.
Like it used to be in the olden days, somebody had to come into your house and put a little bug, a microphone behind like the faceplate of your outlet or something. So
hide it in one of your little, mice statues that are,
These guys, I mean, now like everybody's got a bug on them, camera
All
and
the time.
microphone.
and we implemented it ourselves.
And everybody's so happy to have one.
Yeah, I know they're listening. And everyone will say that too. I'm sure they're listening. I don't care.
I don't care. I don't do anything wrong other than, you have a right to privacy. You have a right to privacy.
Well, and what they don't realize is that all that stuff can be used to blackmail them at any time.
Right.
Which is,
if they get out of line.
Right.
Yeah.
Crazy. Well, anyway, yeah, I think that last segment was really just talking about the god of war there.
Yeah, fear and the god of war. We were talking about Phobos.
Well, anyway, why don't we wrap up this episode? Is there anything else that you'd like to say about our red planet in the sky?
No, I don't think I want to go there anymore, though, after this discussion.
Seriously. And actually there is more, and we may actually follow up with some episodes at some point about this. But just wanted to appreciate you, John. Appreciate everyone at home for listening. Hope you guys enjoyed this conversation. But yeah, John, thanks so much for being with us, man. All right. And for all of you at home, I hope you thought this episode was as out of this world as we did.